My task is today to walk you through some photos that the brethren who were mentioned preserved and took on their journey to America. So, and I'm only will be focusing on those photos that have descriptions, that have comments, and hopefully my goal tonight that you could see how a young man, a young teenager who was mentioned, who became Metropolitan, what he saw when he lived in Ladomirova. That's going to be, hopefully, going to be an outcome of our today's talk. This project came into being because there were those photos, and they have to be identified. And three persons on this list, they would meet sometimes with Metropolitan Laurus, with Archbishop Laurus, and he would comment on those photos. And of course, he enjoys those moments. And for me, I hope he's happy with what's going on right now, because we meant to publish the book, and it never materialized. So it's closest idea to use those photos and share them with the public. So both Daniel and Father Peter, they mentioned various reasons how Ladomirova came into being, and to basically to capture overall the situation. The word, as people knew it in Europe, came to speak rudely to dogs. It stopped to exist. And the three empires, they blew up, and people started to scratch to look for new identities. And part of this new identity was coming to the face of the fathers, renouncing treaty or Union of Uzhgorod, and coming to pre-existence of this, what was before before Union of Brest of 1596, or the Union of Uzhgorod of 1646. So the monastery was established as we are marking today. I mean, this year, 100 years ago. Therefore, Vladika Laurus, who is going to be a central piece of this talk, became the first generation of people who were already baptized Orthodox. So, gives you an idea about people, how they looked. It reminds me one of the comments of Byzantine Metropolitan who was sent to Russia in 13th century, and he wrote home, I have never seen so many people in sheep clothes in one place at the same time. So it's kind of the same. And you see there is Father Confessor, you see his name, and my memory is already failing. So, yeah, thank you so much. So he is glorified by the Ukrainian Church, I believe, and he was ordained in Russia to minister to those who became Orthodox in the Russian Empire. He was ordained to minister across the border in Austro-Hungarian Empire, and so here he is with Archimandrite. How it was called, how Father called, he was known in Swidnik, so with Archimandrite Vitaly here. Okay. You see, my presentation is built around annotations. So this piece is a photo of a piece of wood that was cut up, and people discovered an 8-pointed cross. And for people who just newly converted, it was a big inspiration, they believe. So God with us, so it was right move, right decision to move on. This is probably earliest photo of him with his parents. His mom passed away prematurely at the age of 31. So as it was often the case in rural areas, it was hard for his dad to bring up children. So monastery became his family. And monks, they look very well after him. So you will see his handwriting. He had very beautiful handwriting. When they spent time in Geneva, they arranged French lessons for him. So when they were in Bratislava, Archimandrite Flor, he passed away. I'm sorry, Father Antoni he proposed, they had those meetings, they basically like called spiritual council meeting. We need to add 100 grams of bread to both facilities. So kind of monks look after them. Yes, I think it's a big trauma to lose mom prematurely and so on. But somehow monks, they try to be a mom and dad for young men, for the young men. You see Metropolitan Anastasi, who was a church professional, grew up in clergy family, in clergy caste in Imperial Russia, who spent time in Constantinople. He was head of the church in Moldova before it was annexed by Romanians. So he was sent out from Moldova. He was in the British-controlled Palestine before World War II. So he dealt with Anglicans, he dealt with British Imperial administration, he dealt with the Nazis in Belgrade. So he was very experienced, very wise man who's also buried in Jordan and for whom I have a soft spot. So, and you see this Vasya, he's there, right, already with monks standing there. This slide is called different angles, right, different angles, same concepts. Why different angles? Because you see what I called Igumen Sava, but properly, yes, he's a Archimandrite, but he's kind of known for people in Jordanville as Igumen. So he's standing in this marking cross, right? And description says that he stayed and then he became full for Christ because he didn't want to join the Soviet Church. But I mean, this sort of reality was more complex, that he did become full for Christ, but there is no evidence that he ever had a problem joining Moscow Patriarchate. But for Russian emigres, this explanation would work. It's something they would be comfortable because the Moscow Patriarchate was a church they never wanted to do anything with. And then, speaking of the same concept, this photo there, the farthest photo, was taken a few days ago in the central part of New York State, which is like 5 hours from the Atlantic Ocean, another 5 hours to the Canadian border, where Jordanville is located. So I think it's really like the same idea. So like Jordanville is marked by those crosses. And I propose, I can be wrong, I mean it's just my guess, that there are connections. This piece, Father Peter mentions those Jerusalem holy objects that were brought from Jerusalem in 1931, and that's how this piece of the true cross was kept in Ladomirova. This piece is now kept in Jordanville, in the sanctuary, and it's taken away especially for the elevation of the cross, for the exaltation of the cross. This is the cross which Bishop is raising, and so that's also this, same concepts and connections. And there are a number of those things, but I'm not talking about them. I'm just basic side observation. This is Vladika Laurus' beautiful handwriting that I mentioned to you. He himself identified this picture, which monks stand on a bridge next to what became parish house. Also, this was a guest house with Rastafari monk Vladimir, who also left with Brotherhood and died in Holy Land. So Vladimir Kleiderman, his name. This was the monastery, and you see a young monk who came. You will see his photo. He came like a teenager from Prague, a Russian refugee. He stands next to Bishop Nathanael, who is buried in Munich and was one of the abbots of that monastery, Pachayev. What is important for us, that Ladomirova became the mothership of various St. Joseph of Pachayev Brotherhood in diaspora. So the active one is in Jordanville. The second active one is now in Obermenzing, in the greater Munich. The ones that used to be active and gone out of business was in Quebec and Montreal. They used to have also shops in Brazil and so on. And all this came from this concept of Archbishop Archimandrite Vitaly Maximenko, who brought his Pachayev activity to Slovakia. So, and then you see, this is young Father Serge, and this is Father Serge in 1991 at the grave of Archimandrite Sava And next year he passed away. And he was really monk, a real monk. He never traveled outside of Jordanville, but he always had one wish, to go to Ladomirova. And this wish was granted. He went to Ladomirova. Next year he passed away. So it kind of gives you an idea, especially for older brothers in Jordanville, how Ladomirova was dear and near to their heart. Brutal battles. I believe it was like this Brusilov's breakthrough during World War I. They were a big part of the ethos, like looking after graves of those warriors, of Russian imperial soldiers who fell there, was part of the mission, I guess. So there is chapel that was erected, and this is procession going to this chapel. And again, Father Serge visiting the same place many years after. His father, who became a priest there, Mikhail Minaev, he became priest in America. Again, Bishop Nathanael, the future Bishop Nathanael, and Dr. Gradov, probably from Bratislava. So also at the marked spot of the graves. Archimandrite Cyprian, whom we saw in this Italian movie and who was mentioned a number of times, he became a father of Vladika Laur. He also lost his mom very early. So, and he was a man who didn't have, in a sense, I don't know, I cannot compare him to Father Robert Taub, but they're different. But I mean, he would speak his mind. He wouldn't have no problem to say what he thinks of you. But I think Father Taub, he wouldn't be, how to say, offensive, I think. But I mean, okay, all right. Anyway, so you get an idea, right? So, and he became father figure for Vladika Laur. And you see, to the point that they're buried in Jordanville next to each other. So this sepulchre under the Holy Trinity Cathedral in Jordanville, so they are next to each other. Right, and there is a card. Apparently, they printed as a card to sell as a postcard, and somebody used it. So I am not mistaken. This is the church in Ladomirova, right? And this is the only picture that I identified that I present here. Only with this picture, you see there are Wehrmacht servicemen stationed in Svidnik, who came to the monastery in 1941. And Archimandrite Cyprian, he painted their portraits, probably to get some income. And generally, one of the reasons that monastery had to leave, because monastery was quite enthusiastic about German invasion of the USSR, saying that Germans will do what Western democracies failed to do. They're going to liberate Russia, and they are on crusade against godless authorities and so on. So, and Metropolitan Vitaly, the predecessor of Metropolitan Laurus, is a higher deacon who sits between those gentlemen, and gives idea also what Father Cyprian likes to paint watercolors, and he did a lot of them in Jordanville, and he started already because he was trained in Paris to paint for theaters, and he suddenly converted and decided he was Orthodox all his life, but sort of habitually, and now he decided to become a monk with his brother, and he came to Ladomirova with his brother, who is buried there, priest monk Grigory, and his father Dimitri, who became a novice. So the whole family came to Ladomirova. This is Archbishop Vitaly, which is a big figure, and his influence in Pachayev and in Ladomirova, so to some extent controversial, but he was a fighter at the same time. In America, he was a peacemaker, so I mean, I'm glad I don't have to speak about him, because he's complex. Igumen Seraphim, the abbot, he inscribed this photo to another abbot, who was based in Uzhgorod, and his name was Averky Taushev. So when he came to America, for short time he was the head of the monastery in Jordanville, but something didn't work out with those monks who already lived there, so he had to leave Jordanville. But then this Averky became for a long time abbot of Jordanville. Father Seraphim, he had an idea. He wanted to build out of Ladomirova some kind of Russian optina, sort of. He really wanted to have like professional, if I may use this word, like father confessor. He kind of invited him, exported, pardon my language, from Mount Athos. So, but he didn't stay there for long. It was the priest monk Cassian. And then we see more faces of the brotherhood, yes. Father Philemon came to Wallachia before the revolution, long before the revolution. When in the 1920s, the Finnish government pressed the church to adopt Gregorian calendar. For monks, it became the matter of their conscience. And a number of monks left, and Father Philemon, he came to Ladomirova and came to Jordanville, and shortly after that he died in 1953. So a point of mentioning him to say that there were monks who connected those Russian emigre youth, because many of those people, they were in their 80s or 20s, they were uprooted by the revolution, by the civil war, and what they went through, it traumatized them profoundly. So the only sense for them after what they've been through was to become monks. And also idea of Ladomirova was, we are not going to serve Russia politically, but we are going to serve Russia with prayers and by printing books. That's how we're going to fight Bolshevism. So fighting Bolshevism was a big part of the mission. So people like Father Philemon, those young monks, can be connected with the tradition of Russian monasticism. So next to him, Father Antoni, who was a printer. He came to Ladomirova in 1932. He was in White Army. He was originally from the Russian North. I caught a glimpse of him, and when he would speak in Russian Norse. Right, again, along the lines of mentioning Jordanville, something big, somehow Father Seraphim, you see he's very proud, looking very proudly next to the Russian author, writer, Ivan Shmelyov, who was based in Paris somehow, and he would spend also time in Latvia, summertime. So somehow they managed to get him to Ladomirova, but Father Seraphim got too enthusiastic and even mentioned you can be buried here and so on. He was so overly enthusiastic, I think, kind of scared Shmelyov away. So you see, because they published this periodical, so they were kind of connected with cultural life and so on, and invitation of a person like Shmelyov supposed to help them in their work. This is another card from Father Cyprian. We saw that Father Peter showed us that's moving, unique, important inscription written on the last day of the departure. And this is another one from one monk to another monk. So Father Cyprian, he wrote on the back of photo of his work to Father Serge. I don't know what kind of relationship they have all their lives, but I believe they were friends. So I don't think they had fights and so on, but I think they remained friends for a long time. Yeah? But Father Serge, he still looks young here, but he came to Jordanville even younger. And he remained a monk all his life, and everyone, all who knew him, they have good memories of him about his humor and so on. Yeah. So, and this is photo of him. And this is Father Nathanael, whose father was an upper procurator of the Russian Synod under the provisional government. So Prince Lvov, he remained in the Soviet Russia and became active with the Renovationist Church. So, and Father Nathanael, before he came here, he lived in Harbin in China. He was a missionary in Ceylon, in Sri Lanka nowadays. So he was in Serbia. He was a very gifted man. And he was an Anglophile, so they would have discussions with future Metropolitan. So the Metropolitan recalls that the Metropolitan kind of, he wasn't that critical about Germans, and Father Nathanael, he couldn't stand them, so they kind of had this kind of discussions. This is young Father Job, Eve, who couldn't go to America because something was found on his lungs, and he became the first abbot of the monastery of St. Job of Pachayev, which is in the Greater Munich in passing over Menzing. So in the former SS barracks. Yeah, that's his photo in Ladomirova. So, and this is kind of graffitis that used to show up on the church just before monks took away, kind of sending messages they were not welcome there anymore. And this is in Geneva. They found their way to the neutral country, and you see that Vasily and two Vasilis, the black one and the white one. The white one is future Father Flor, and the black one, Metropolitan Laurus. They already clad it in cassocks, so they became novices. Right? And brotherhood was reinforced by people whom they met on the way. And this is Father Peter was mentioning those visits. And this is the first visit of Higumen of Abbot Laurus after World War II to Ladomirova. I think he's overwhelmed and he's seeing different Ladomirova, the Ladomirova he never knew before. So Ladomirova became a parish church. So the rest is history.